Good morning. My name is Jean Marie Lown. Today is February 28th, the second Sunday of Lent. Today's first reading comes from Genesis chapter 22, and the gospel reading comes from Mark chapter 9, verses 2 through 10. Everyone knows that Lent is about sacrifice, so it is fitting that the first reading in the second Sunday of Lent recalls one of the most famous sacrifices of all time. Here's the background. Abraham really only desires one thing: a son that will lead to the descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. The only problem is that his wife is barren and of advanced years. She's 90. So he tries to solve the problem in his own way. This does not work out very well. God intervenes, works a miracle, and causes the elderly Sarah to conceive and bear a son. There's absolutely nothing more precious to Abraham than his son Isaac. Indeed, to give up his son would be to give up himself. It was the ultimate heart-wrenching test for Abraham. God is asking him to take his son and sacrifice him to God himself. God stops Abraham just before he slays his son. The ordeal was a test to see if Abraham was truly devoted to God in faith, obedience, and gratitude. God doesn't want Isaac's blood, only Abraham's heart. So he provides a substitute, which shows the true meaning of all authentic sacrifice. We give to God something that is precious and represents our very selves. Kind of like what we should be giving up for Lent. That depends on who you are. What God is doing through Abraham is preparing the world for sacrifice of his only beloved Son, Jesus Christ, who he is going to send into the world to be a sacrifice for the sins of the world, so that all the families of the earth might be blessed through him. In other words, what God is demonstrating is that he needs a man who trusts him so much that he will pre-enact the crucifixion 2,000 years before it happens. Okay, it's because we're doing Bible study. Let us look at all the striking parallels from Isaac to Jesus, the old and the new. First, Abraham offers his only beloved son as a sacrifice, which of course parallels the Heavenly Father offering his only beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Second, Isaac carries the wood for the sacrifice up to Mount Moriah and is laid down upon the wood to become the sacrifice. Of course, we know that Jesus carries the wood of the cross up the mountain, where he is also laid upon it to become the sacrifice for the sins of the world. Thirdly, look at the effects. God says to Abraham, "Because you have done this, all nations of the world are going to be blessed through you, and because of what you were willing to do." We know the sacrifice of Christ upon the cross brings about the conversion of many people, recognizing Jesus as the Messiah and Son of God. Fourth, when Isaac is saved from being sacrificed, God provided the substitute of a ram caught in the thicket, a thorn bush by his horns. Christ is that ram. Just as the ram is caught by its horns in the thorn bush, so Jesus wears a crown of thorns as he is going to be the substitute. He is going to take Isaac's place, in a sense, so that he will lay down his life in sacrifice so that the world might be blessed. And if that weren't amazing enough, there is one last striking fact. Genesis 22 makes it clear that the place where Isaac was sacrificed is Mount Moriah. Later in the Bible, in 2 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 1, says that King Solomon began to build the house of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah. In other words, Abraham offered his beloved son Isaac on the very same mountain that Jesus, the beloved Son of the Father, is going to lay down his life for the sins of the world. These amazing parallels and facts are given for our sake because we can read the Old and New Testaments and see that this has been God's amazing plan of salvation from the very beginning. Therefore, the sacrifice of Isaac is preparation for our journey in our faith. We might not always understand it, but if we, like Abraham, remain faithful and obedient to the faith, we too can be part of God's amazing plan of salvation. Our second reading says, "If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but handed him over for us all, how will he not also give us everything else along with him?" The Transfiguration of Christ in our gospel reading also reveals the kind of preparation of faith for us. Jesus takes some of his friends and invites them to travel with him as he makes his way up the mountain. While they were there praying, something wild and wonderful happened. Jesus was transfigured. He was changed. He shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. Imagine how surprised and shocked and taken aback they were. Once composed, Peter utters the famous words, "Lord, it is wonderful for us to be here with you." But more importantly than what was said is what they heard. "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." These words are meant for us today as much as they were for those who first heard them. Today we are bombarded by news all the time. For those of us now have 24-hour news on our televisions. We have worldwide news on the internet, magazines, newspapers. We're filled with news, but not all of it good, and some of it might be fake. The word and message that Jesus speaks to us and offers is life-giving and life-changing. The words of Jesus nourish, nurture, and sustain us if we open our hearts and our lives to hearing it. The Transfiguration gives us a brief and fleeting glimpse of Jesus in all of his glory. It's a taste of what is to come. It is offered to encourage and challenge us in our daily lives. It reminds us that our lives are far more than what we see, hear, and experience every day. It's just not a matter of getting through the day. Being a follower of Jesus is about living with meaning, purpose, and hope. The Transfiguration not only offers us a glimpse of Jesus in all of his glory, but it offers each of us a foretaste of what God promises each of us in the fullness of the kingdom. We may never experience anything as powerful as the Transfiguration, but every day, in countless and seemingly small ways, God does break into our world and our daily lives. Every time we experience a moment of peace, joy, reconciliation, or forgiveness, God is with us. Every time we reach out to help another person is a moment of transfiguration both for ourselves and for those who we help. Every time someone shows care or concern for us is a moment when God reaches out to us. During this Lenten season, let us open our hearts so that we may hear Jesus speaking to us. May we slow down and look for the moments of the small but important times of transfiguration in our own ordinary and daily lives. Thank you so much. Have a good day.